Hello and welcome to a new episode of Building the Hive. Today I'm in a very special location, and as you can see, I'm being joined by not only Wim, but also by David. Hello guys.
Hi, hi Tess.
Hi, thank you for, joining me for the first time with the three of us. How does that feel?
Well, it feels natural actually.
It does.
It's in a natural place, and we're always with the three of us actually, so it's
That's
good.
true. Yeah, so we just moved our natural meetings, our conversations to in front of the camera. I'm also really happy to be personally in front of the camera again, and also that David is joining us this time.
Yay.
Last time it was just Wim and myself. So let's start off with the location for today's episode. Where are we, David?
We're in Krux, and this is one of the best, if not the best, bars in Amsterdam. And it is also sort of the location where all of this has started.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
About 5 years ago, when Wim and I met, this is where we sat down together with the three of us and had a couple of beers and started brainstorming crazy ideas, which then eventually led to here. And with the permission of our gracious host, the owner of Krux, we are now recording at this amazing location. And, you know, we are a food and agri-oriented venture builder fund. So
What better location?
what better location than
Yeah.
the home of very, very tasty beer?
Yes. And I believe also the home to where the idea for this podcast started.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
We've had many meetings here, and I think when we were always very content driven, and I think it was you who said like, let's do a podcast, and then we were like, yeah, and then we
The idea started to form. We also decided what it is that we want to share with all of you. So today actually the topic is more about how did we get here, and also dive a little bit deeper into what we have already touched upon in previous episodes. And I'm gonna be asking some questions, guys, so prepare for that. Are you ready?
Let's
ready.
go!
All right, let's go. So, as I remember, talking about this specific place, I remember they did something really special during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because of course during COVID, all the local bars and the restaurants and everything had to close. And they actually came up with a quite, interesting business idea. They started to can their own beers. And that allowed us to still be able to enjoy the most tasty beers of Amsterdam, if you ask me. I am myself more of a wine drinker, but beer is definitely on the table here.
I can concur. Yeah.
Yeah, right?
It's great beer. Yeah. No, for sure.
Well, to start at the beginning, they make their own beer.
They
Right.
start,
And not every single pub makes their own beer. And back in the days, it actually used to be right here. So next to where we are, this is where the brewery was as well. Yes. And now they have moved that part. They moved the brewery part next to Amstel, I think. And here we are now in an extended seating area. One sec. They used to brew their beer here, but then they moved it to next to the Amstel, and now there's a more seating area here. And the beer is very unique. I wouldn't say it's traditional Dutch beer. I also wouldn't say it's reminiscent of.
No, it's
Some-
kind of they also have like like a pilsner, but they're kind of like the IPA and then some special beers, some stronger ones. So it's very, I think it's very unique because it's their own beer, you know. So it's
And there's a flavor for everyone.
yeah.
What makes you come back here, Lynn?
Well, first of all, what makes me come back here is you guys, because of course you the office is here, and I don't live here in the region. So, but yeah, now I come here also sometimes even alone when I stay over here, and because you start to get to know the people. The place is like very quiet. It's buzzing, but not really like you don't have the city center like pressure of all people on you, which
Absolutely
I really
not.
like. Next to the great beer, they also have this great fried chicken, which I really love.
Everybody loves that, I believe. Even
yeah.
Bernie is in love with chicken.
And yeah, in the meantime, also some people that we actually work with, also we found out that they live here, so it's a nice place to come here. Yeah.
That was a very interesting revelation that when we were talking about, oh, there's this person and that person, I'm like, oh, nice, do they live close to us? Oh, yeah, here and here. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, they go to this bar called Krux. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Right here.
Yeah,
It's right here. But back to the COVID story that Tess was...
I found it super interesting, and also that sparked a little bit of our start, but I'll let you have this.
Just briefly, so obviously we all remember there was a curfew in effect, and that impacted the service industry more than most. They were not allowed to, unless it was, how was it called? Essential services or something like that. Unless you fell into that category, you were not allowed to service guests and clients. So what they did is indeed they started canning their beer into cute little 033 six packs.
Yeah.
And then from the benches outside, I'm just looking outside, they have created a sort of barricade, and then the canned beer was behind it, and then you could approach that barricade and purchase beer that way, keeping the community well oiled.
It was
during those
actually
months.
really funny times in COVID. It was when I thought that you really could drive from Almelo to Amsterdam in an hour and a half, and I was like, oh, I can do this like 3 days a week. And
That's
then
doable.
normal life started again, and it was like, nah, maybe not.
Yeah, it's also one of the first times that I started exploring some of these bigger buildings in Dubai, for example. And I went on top of the Burj Al Arab, and there was nobody there.
Yeah.
So it
Made you feel special. As
made
well,
me
I
feel
suppose.
special for
Yeah.
sure. But that was a unique experience.
So this also means that you guys have already been working together for 5 years, right?
Yes.
What
Yeah.
have you learned about each other and about working together during that time?
It's a funny relationship in a way because we're like very different. I think David is very much like an academic, and I'm like very much a people person. I
Little
think that
professor.
that's yeah, well, exactly, and it's something that is well, it's very matching because in the whole thing, everything that we did before, there's this like great brain with a lot of knowledge that actually doesn't like people in general, you know, which is something that I really enjoy. And I think that combination for me, it was it's what I always had is I had a lot of ideas, things I wanted to do, but I never knew how to execute them or how to really do it. And then we met, and it was immediately this okay, well, this guy, it's what I say to people, like people trusted me in the beginning, and they believe that he can make it happen, because it's a very eloquent talker, and there's just a lot of knowledge there. So I think that combination is that's what kind of made me jump into it. Well, quite fast actually in when we started working together. Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I think this yin yang that you're describing that works really well across multiple sort of disciplines in our life, in our professional life. I have garnered a certain network around me, but even that network I'm kind of passing over to you, and I don't mind sort of reconnecting with them or reigniting the flame, but then I always push it over to him and ask for your help with the social interactions. And I prefer more sitting behind the screen and working away and maybe reading or researching or writing something. But then it's a strange combo. It's like I don't mind being put on, you know,
On camera.
or present at the conference or something. But then once that is over, they usually want to ask for questions or whatever. I'm like, just go over there.
Yeah, I think it's if I look at it from a personal point of view, I think we also share like very similar values that we quite that are really important, which is like loyalty, trust. That we got burned a few times, which and then it's good, but there's this and it sounds maybe a bit weird, but this unconditional trust and loyalty, which I really value above anything.
It's very difficult to find, it's very difficult to forge, and it's actually very easy to lose. I think it's a very fragile thing that if we would not respect it, so not just each other, but that relationship and that special connection, then I think it could get hurt and it could go away.
Well, I think that there have been people that try to break it, and but yeah.
I still remember we had one employee who just had like some big discovery on the research floor, and then he told you, because I think you were on the floor, and then he starts running up to tell me.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I was exiting from the second floor and coming to him and saying, "Hey, congratulations." He's like, "What?"
You already knew.
But it just happened. And I'm like, "Yeah, Wim already messaged me." It's like, "But it happened 2 minutes ago." I'm like, yeah. He just messaged me a minute ago.
It's pretty unique, the communication, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I mean, I've been a witness to this for the last few years, and
Poor you.
no, it's actually really beautiful because you guys really complement one another. Where the other person is maybe not that skilled in a certain area, or like you're saying, it's not maybe your preferred position to be always the talker and be super social. That's where you complement one another, and that's where Wim also happily steps in and, well, sometimes also translates, I think, what you're saying. When it becomes too theoretical and too technical, then Wim is the perfect translator as well.
No, it's true. It's also that I remember that once you said, like, I never thought you were gonna follow me this far in like the opportunistic side, and that is something that we're very, very similar in.
Yeah, like, share that.
A very, I think we have we're maybe also a high appetite for risk in a positive way. I think, and that's what we're not afraid to take chances and to try something. I really
thinking outside the box. I think the two, and a high sense of justice and injustice.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think if you put these three things next to each other, those are the common denominators between us. And then Tess is the more level-headed, cool-headed party to us.
Not always, but I try to be.
I think that you also like out-of-the-box, unorthodox solutions.
Otherwise, I think it wouldn't work.
I think
Three of us.
You also have a proclivity for opportunism and finding opportunistic opportunities. But I think where you differ from us, thank God, is the risk appetite, where I think that, of course, you do like high risk, high reward ventures, otherwise we wouldn't be working together. But I believe that you are sort of the grounding force sometimes, and that doesn't have to be about millions of euros. It can be just about, hey, should we eat out here or should we eat out there? Or should we fly from Amsterdam to Dubai, or should we drive over to Brussels to fly from there to Dubai because it's so much cheaper? So,
well, in all fairness, I think that one came from Wim. So not only that, I think it's also that what you guys have in common, but I also heard and sometimes still hear a shared frustration with how things are usually done within ventures, but also within finance. And I do think that the step that we're taking now with Hive is actually a very unique model, as it differs a lot from existing investment models. But what made you guys feel that the traditional models or the existing models, they're simply not working?
Well, just to broaden even this scope that you're asking, it's Wim and I talk more and more about this in the past few weeks, that it's not just in finance and not just in VC and not even unique to food and agriculture, but in governments, European Union, you know what I mean? Yeah. I think that has been present in us since we worked together, ever since we met, but maybe even beforehand.
Yeah.
How would you describe it? Well, first of all, what is it?
Let's point it out what it is first, and then
the thing is, to me, to me personally, it is theory over action, or action over theory, actually, where You have a lot of people writing policies and all these letters and papers about we can do this, we can do that, and then there's like 15 years passes by and you're still at the same level. You have a lot of like content and a lot of ideas, but the action is always missing. And then I think there's so much money in these government institutions. Why are the private markets not matching up to the where does the money go? Because if things don't change, so that's a big frustration of mine. But I think that's you can apply that to anything in like politics that you have opinions about that. But
mostly European.
Yeah,
it does not really hold true for American. Whatever you think about American politics, it is more true that they are action and execution oriented, and sure, a lot of times they make bad decisions, but at least something happens. Whereas you just had a discussion with a friend of yours. What was it? With like 5 years from now, it's 2030.
Yeah, because it's somebody that's very involved in like the Green Deal and everything around that. That I think it's there's so much thought leadership, and the action doesn't match up the policies.
No. 6 years ago, Tess and I were at the Eurocontrol in Belgium, which is of course the institution or committee or whatever you want to call it that is the organization that regulates flights, airplanes, drones, so a lot of things around aviation, basically. And at the time, we were very busy with drone projects and camera and drone-based projects. And we were sitting in the front row, and we actually had the chance to speak and give a suggestion to the committee. And this was about counterterrorism at the time. And I had a minute. So my 1 minute was about, okay, that's very nice. I think there were like 400 people in the committee. Everybody's always planning, talking, white paper here, white paper there, another task force, another research grant, another feasibility study, but nothing ever leads to execution. So when will we actually start enacting some of these amazing ideas, and when not? And just yesterday I saw an article that compared beauty, food and animal-based beauty products, how many of them are on the ban list in the US, and how long is the ban list in Europe. In the US, I think it's like 6 or 7 products. In Europe, it's 1,600.
Yeah, that's insane.
So I do think that as a consumer, Europeans can actually feel a little bit safer, but maybe that has come to a level where when you're comparable to like letting your kid out to bike, but then you tape pillows on every single surface, to the joints, to the knees, to the...
Yeah, I think it's this whole culture of, and I think there's a change now. You see it like slightly, but there's a big focus on success in the US, for example. But success doesn't come without failure, and they don't judge failure.
No.
So it's like the step to
So
success
at least you
comes
tried.
with failure.
Yeah.
And I sometimes have the feeling that in Europe they put you on a pedestal, and then when you fail they say like, haha,
See you well.
yeah, loser.
Yeah.
That's like these things. It's but I think it also depends on who you surround yourself with, and people that support success, and that also say, hey, maybe you failed but you're still standing and now you're doing this, and I really value those kind of people in my life.
Absolutely. The motivation should not be to avoid failure. If that is your motivation, then you will always work with half measures. You will always take, you will always go into the deal with an assumption that it could fail. Yeah. And if you plan for that, sure, you might have a plan B, C, D, whatever, but you are compromising your plan A. And I think that's what is the fundamental difference between US entrepreneurship and European entrepreneurship.
Okay, so can we zoom in a little bit more on like traditional VCs and what the critical points are there?
Yeah, if from my side, if you look at the VCs, and we've spoken to a lot of VCs and private equity over the past, and private equity is still a bit different. but VCs are early, and if you think about when you go early, I think you need there's a lot of building involved as well, and it's not like quote unquote gambling. That's where exactly at that time you need people need value add, which I think is missing, and it's very focused also on investments instead of on founders, which I think is, and the management team and the idea. They usually the finance part is not something that they're the strongest in. That's why you actually need a VC to support you in and to build it. But also let them be the entrepreneur and then let them and support them in that with giving them like it's like a parent where you give your kid the freedom to learn things, but when they fall, you catch them.
Yeah, so it's a guiding hand. As
Yeah, that's
opposed to
how I see
restriction.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I also think that the VCs often receive the mockery or the joke that, you know, they just throw money on the wall and then hopefully out of 10, one sticks, and that one that sticks that will outperform the loss of 9 others, which I do think to a certain degree is true. I think that is their strategy. But then again, just to go back one step, it is different in the US where they're more like, there's also more capital. They're more likely to throw it on at the wall. Whereas here in Europe, they almost measure with two measures. On the one hand, they are looking at it from okay, how many years has it operated? What has it presented during those years, etc., etc. So they put you in sort of a framework into a financial modeling, and then they discount it with how risky the venture is, what is the aggressive growth potential, etc., etc., etc. Whereas in the US, another joke is that it's almost better to be pre-revenue and have no fixed revenue, because then there is no basis for that multiplier to apply.
No.
But you simply take it on the vision. And then if the vision says that 10% of the total addressable market will generate X, Y, Z revenue.
Then you really work together.
Yeah.
To get there. But you need the person that sees it and that can do it, and that's in my opinion where you should bet on.
Yeah.
Do I believe that these guys can do what they say they do, even if there is like the operational part is, or on the finance part there things are missing? That's where you can add value. That's also what we do on sales and marketing, for example. If you know that people need more, like better branding and more network, they don't always need money.
No.
They sometimes need
Operational support.
yeah.
Or just a bit of networking, introductions, bit of this, bit of that.
Yeah, well, I think what we see when we also speak to other founders is that there's always a pressure to perform and a pressure towards exit. So there's let's say usually a VC fund is like 10 to 12 years. So in the first 5 years they invest, and then the second part of it, they need to perform, they need to generate income, and then like go to an exit. But some companies it can work. Other companies need more time, and that's what we see especially in food and agri. It's a very complex business. It's a lot slower. So that's when we had discussions about is that we will do it differently, and we will have like how they call it an evergreen fund, which is open-ended.
Yeah.
So you can also focus then on the longer term and then longevity, which I think is quite important.
Yeah, so there's in our case there is no fixed liquidation date where 5, 10 or 12 years from now, whatever position is the position, even if it's up or down, it will be liquidated. So that is not how we operate. And I think that in this case, it also gives more flexibility to the limited partners who are investing in the fund to then be sort of interested in the outcome, and not just like, okay, they park their money for 10, 12 years here and there, and then by the time it needs to be liquidated, it's a different asset manager or a different officer handling that transaction. But it's more like, okay, this is how far it has grown. Now I am actually past my redemption lockup, so I could redeem, but I see how it's performing, and I also know that there will be no definitive end to this. and it comes with a dash of secondaries sprinkled on top of the pie. So there is potential for an extremely aggressive growth potential with our fund.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's you see company X fund 1, then fund 2, fund 3. With us it's like Hive fund. This is the fund, and it will grow exponentially.
Will grow with the businesses.
They will
as
grow
well.
with the businesses as well, and then you can still see how you allocate and where you allocate and how you do it.
When was the moment it really clicked for you guys that we need to do something different?
I don't know if we can talk about what we did before, but of course
Let's see.
We've been in our previous ventures, we've been very much operationally focused, and at some point we also decided what do we want to do, what do we like, and where do we want to focus on. Because if you have a business and you grow it, then at some point you need to either give the business to somebody else and let them operate it if you want to grow. And we like the growing part, and the building side, the creative side. And that's when we actually clicked that we want to focus more on venture building, which probably will be most of our job that we do, because that's where we can really do the cool stuff. I think about a year ago.
Yeah, well, for me it stems from the fact that you don't want the businessman to farm. You don't want the farmer to be the businessman.
No.
You don't want an engineer to be busy with finance, and you also don't want the finance guy to be responsible for engineering. So if you have these disciplines mixed and you put the wrong people in the wrong places, or you force, unfortunately, when you talk about smallhold farmers, like small and medium farmers who don't have an apparatus and a management team around them, then they do have to do everything themselves. And what you see from especially Europe, Central Eastern Europe, is that farmers are being abused, and there is price gouging happening, which we indeed have discovered approximately a year and a half ago, when we started one of our own ventures into fruit and vegetable trading. And what you notice is that there is such a basic infrastructure missing.
Yeah.
Whether you mean whatever we mean by that, as in from accounting to legal to marketing, strategic choices, or just even knowing about their own competitors or their own market. They know everything about their farm, their orchard, their growing cycles, their own employees. So they have very, very expert operational knowledge, but it's sort of like it's like tunnel vision, and it's very much the little farmers association and the little unions and cooperatives. They are like echo chambers, because you sell it for 35 cents a kilo, I'll sell it for 36, I'll sell it for 34, and then that's it. There's no imagination, there's no vision, there's no creativity. And I think if we bring only that to the mix, nothing else, no money, no big contracts, no big expansion plans, no severe fundamental change to the business plan, just a bit of creativity and a bit of more positive outlook towards, let's say, internationalization, so that Polish farmer will be given the opportunity to sell something to a UK retailer and whatnot. Then I think with very little money you can have a huge impact.
Yeah, but this is exactly how I think why it will work, is because we don't need millions to add value. And if you can grow 1 million investment by also adding layers of marketing and branding and sales and network, I think that's probably more valuable than throwing another million on top of it and say, hey, do your thing. Because they're already doing their thing. They just need outside thinking and creative thinking next to them. And I think that's really where you can build partnerships, and because they know what they need to do. And maybe they can add a bit of technology to it and a bit of like spice and flavor to it. But that's it's equally important these days.
Yep.
So the philosophy behind it is really clear, and also where it's coming from. But I'm curious, who came up with the name Hive, and what does that mean to you?
I think we kind of came up with it together as a natural continuation of Smartcast, in a sense that Smartcast has a logo B, right? Is a B logo, and the name Hive already came up within Smartcast to refer to some of our research that we were doing. So that was used as a sort of internal code name for something, and we always said, right, that it's nature's strongest and most perfect recurring shape.
Yes.
The logo itself is also, I think, 5 perpendicular pentagons or hexagons. I'm not sure.
See.
Yeah, I think it's hexagons. Yeah, most of our companies are named after a variation of either bee or bees or beehive or beekeeping.
Where does that fascination come from?
I think that originates with me, and I honestly don't really know where it comes from, but it has grown into a fascination with, of course, pollination and bees, and without bees it would be a very difficult time for us to grow food. There are, of course, alternatives or natural alternatives as well, but without getting too much into the details about that.
That's okay.
It's I think it comes from a certain respect towards the animal.
Yeah. I actually remember when the first time the word hive was actually being dropped is you were just talking about how, 6 years ago, I think almost 7 years ago already, we started this project with drones. And I remember that you were the one who said the hive mind is something that really attracts you to apply this to technology and to AI, and how actually we need to have the decentralized interlinked system. And whether you apply that to technology or, as Wim also just pointed out, in the business sector, and how all the different facets actually come together. And sometimes the founders are already well on their way. They just need to have the support within their own system.
Well, I think modern business, so the modern way of doing business is all about integration. And you can read a lot about this. It's also very trendy on the social media, that it is no longer a pure producer or innovator, or let's call them a one-dimensional creator that will control the business or the flow of the supply chain, but rather a smart integrator who is able to bring the building blocks together, from production to processing, packaging, cooling, logistics, etc., just to name a few. And in that analogy, Hive also reminds me of sort of the collective. It's the collective of bees, and these beautiful, perfect shapes flawlessly connecting with one another. It makes me think of different businesses, ventures, projects flawlessly connecting.
It's kind of what we say, that it's an ecosystem where all the companies actually add value to each other instead of just but that's also from an investor point of view. I would never invest in a company where I cannot add value, or we cannot add value, because it doesn't. What are you doing then? Because you first, that's how I say it, you need to have like an interest. You need to have like a connection with the founders, because that's step one. If you cannot work with them, it's never gonna add value. Let's see. Maybe you help in a different way with one company than with the other. Maybe that one needs more money and that one needs something different. So that's if you have done that ecosystem, and I think that's really, really cool if you can build it like that.
Yeah, I mean, last year, if you remember, was it last year or the year before? I think last year in May, we were in the Amsterdam forest, and when we were talking, certain people also said to us, it was again the three of us, like, just drop everything that we're doing and let's just start something 50-50 as a new venture. So you can tell from that conversation and all the other conversations we had ever since that when a venture has reached a certain maturity and valuations come in and all the complex due diligence and everything, that usually muddies the water.
Yeah.
So I think part of the reason why we are focusing more also on venture building and creating new projects and companies from the ground up with then together a sector specialist co-founder is because it brings so much more value and also so much more clarity than basically throwing 2, 3, 5 million at X valuation. And these valuations are crazy, by the way.
Yeah, it's continuous. But yeah.
Okay.
So you're looking to make a positive impact. What kind of impact are you aiming for with Hive?
You begin.
I personally would like to reduce the clutter and stutter and red tape in the European investment sector. That is sort of, besides the whole, what I've been saying for 10 plus years is access to food and water should be a basic human right. That yes, that's
It's a big mission for you.
That's a personal mission. That's my passion. But specifically with Hive, I think if we can create a flexible evergreen fund that operates at the absolute highest level, has the highest level board members and attracts the biggest talent, then we can really create a new way of thinking about the food system. So I think revolutionizing the food system and then decluttering the investment apparatus around that food system is sort of not necessarily like a mission statement or vision statement, but I think as a practical goal, that's something for me.
I think practical is the word. I think there's people overcomplicate like a lot, and people are always looking for something new. People tend to overcomplicate because they want to raise money based on a new idea, and it's something that's going to revolutionize. Whilst I think the biggest revolution is keeping things simple, and let's start preserving, for example, what's already produced, so that doesn't go to waste. And maybe when there is waste, that you can turn that something into. So it shouldn't always be focused on new production ways or new ideas to create something. I think that's, for me, in the first instance, that's the biggest impact. If we can make a difference in optimizing what's already there, I think that's kind of where my head's at from that point of view.
So for me, the takeaway from this is that we believe more in integration and less in innovation, or innovation when it comes to procedures and solutions, but it doesn't necessarily have to be innovation for the sake of innovation. And do we believe more in production or distribution?
Well, distribution for me, yeah.
For me too.
I think having controlled and very well planned distribution, I think it's really important.
But I think it goes across sectors.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to have anything to do with food and agriculture. Even just if you think about where you come from, the investment banking and finance sector, I think having a distribution network and having a distribution partners around the fund is so much more powerful than knowing 1,000 LPs. Because you have these funny lists, and I'm not trying to flame on everybody, but you have these LinkedIn posts
where you have to comment.
Yeah, comment, share, comment, list, comment Excel file, and then you get an Excel of 30,000 email addresses, and then you can cold call or cold email them. Probably.
Yeah, but you only get it when I think it's more like a gain connections exercise where people say, you need to send me a connection request, and then you can then you get it, and then I will send you a message. Which is usually they have a lot of followers, but are they really following or not?
So it is bait, essentially.
Bait.
Yeah.
It's a different business model altogether, I would wager. But going back a little bit to what we were saying before is how businesses had to adapt during several times in the past few years, but interestingly, how we use the example of how Krux had to adapt during the COVID period. And they did that by finding a new business model to stay alive. But this period also exposed actually a lot of fragility in other sectors as well, especially within the food systems. And talking just now about distribution, we saw a lot of empty shelves. Mm-hmm. So how the supply chains also froze. and that entire harvest went to waste because they simply had nowhere to go, yet people were getting hungry. What did that moment in time teach you about food distribution, and how is Hive trying to solve this through whether the ventures, or maybe you guys have some other ideas?
Well, I think chaos always upsets the established order, right? If you just look at Trump, for example, whether you hate him or you like him, he always shakes things up, stirs things up, which inherently creates opportunities, right? COVID was as such. Every single negative, doesn't have to be catastrophic, but every single negative event, just to be very cliche, you know, one door closes and another one opens. But that's actually true. And I think if you are being opportunistic with these, but not abusive, then I think it's fair game.
Yeah. Well, I think from a food point of view, I think the shortage that you had in shelves was mostly also like climate driven, because let's say because the climate change is that the harvesting or the production is upset when it freezes in May or in April still. So yeah, that's something that where you really need probably technology or maybe more controlled environment agriculture. But on the other side, if you can keep production stored in a proper way and then redistribute it from there, that's a big win, and that's I think where we will add a lot of value with some of the ventures that we are doing.
I think it also, if you use clever marketing and clever branding, which is where you come in, of course, then you can also shed the light on some critical facts and figures that are maybe not known by the everyday person. And then in preparation for potentially catastrophic or critical events, you can also look at, for example, how China is amassing seeds and other food and feeding material in quantities that is more than the rest of the world added together. So they are preparing for something. They've been doing this for quite a while.
So probably they have very good storage then for these seeds, but also for maybe other
But the
vegetables.
entire supply chain. So how can you, just money alone is not enough to amass the kind of storage that they have. You had to build. Go on.
No, go on.
You have to build a very intricate, very detailed supply chain to source that, and also to kind of go under the radar and be able to amass it before it's sort of too late and it's there.
Yeah, wasn't it that the UAE, for example, has like a massive storage of rice, and then next to that they control like a lot of the rice fields in like, let's say, Vietnam or other places. You control the growing and then also the storage, just to make sure that there is no shortage. It's
And just to tie it back nicely to the COVID questions from Tess, during COVID they were actually exporting food and sharing it with other neighboring countries, which is super weird, being a country that primarily has no own production.
that doesn't grow.
That doesn't grow, to become an exporter of food during a crisis. That's an interesting one. Okay.
So I'm wondering how you guys landed on the mix of actually combining secondaries, venture building, and real assets.
Go
It's a
on, then.
question for me, my guys.
Well, I'll be very honest. It was I was in a call with somebody from Franklin Templeton in private equity, and we were talking about our fund and what we were gonna do. And he said, like, if I can give you one tip, look at secondaries in the food and agri space. So that was that. And then we also had the idea to build ventures. That was actually the initial idea. And when looking more and more into the whole structure, we thought, let's combine them, because in our heads, they really match, and it's not very common, but especially with an evergreen structure, I think it's really matching, because you have this like stable income, let's say income generating portfolio of companies that's like the base of the fund, and then next to that you have a bit more high high risk new ventures that you build, and that you can probably also build in on the basis of what you have in your secondaries, where you can add value and how can you build them together. So I think that's I think it's really interesting.
And I think the timing couldn't be better because there have been a lot of failures in, especially in the controlled environment agriculture space, but otherwise in general in the food and agriculture industry as well, both from a production and a distribution side. So that also means that you can now get a lot of undervalued opportunities.
Yeah.
And another thing we have learned, a lot of traditional VCs, they are cash starved and over allocated, which means that they are forced to sell their positions at the extremely discounted prices, and they simply cannot move on to the next round.
Yeah.
So if someone has invested and allocated all of their positions based on a set valuation, and then the target company goes on to the next round, they simply can't carry that.
No, it's interesting, and then maybe some companies don't fit the cycle, but they don't necessarily need to be like a bad company, like how they say some kids bloom later than others, right? I'm still blooming, but it's the same with companies.
Yeah.
And those also deserve the opportunities, right?
Yeah, definitely, and they also deserve the time to develop.
Yeah.
Which is usually when a VC pulls out or when something doesn't happen. Some of these go bankrupt, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah, because the pressure is on an exit or...
Yeah, and then funds. Yep. So that's really where. And the real assets is. I still believe that investors also like infrastructure and real assets because it's really something that. That's more safe.
I think it's also probably the most traditional and the most stable, whatever.
Yeah, but it is like cold storage. It's real estate.
Yeah, it's basically a real estate play.
Yeah.
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 All right.
Off you
So-
go. Sorry.
I don't know who it was. One of you has said before, it's not a fund, it's an engine. Who do I look at? Because I hear it then from both of you, but I want to know what's the source
That's
here.
Wim.
Yeah, that's me.
what does that
It links back to the ecosystem where you really build like this engine where you build these companies that add together and that can add value to each other, and that almost coexist, where you have you build let's say a food snack, but then you also have maybe a secondary position in the food distributor. So it's really, it's an engine where one company can really benefit from the other, and then it's also integration, as we said before. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, basically one of the AI projects that we were working on also was imagined as sort of a Hive engine where you can plug in certain different extensions to it, add-ons to it. So the core of it remains the same, but the functionality can be attached or removed from it, and those are basically the positions.
Yeah.
What is the hardest part about building something that doesn't exist yet?
Whew. It's convincing people that it will work. And to me, that's also the fun part. Because when somebody says it hasn't been done before, then it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. And I think that's why a lot of things that people do things, and I think especially in agriculture, then they do it because it's been done like that before.
Yeah. Has a proven track record, people believe in it.
Yeah, and then somebody comes from the outside and then maybe look at it from this angle, and you don't know anything about this, like and that's so I think the hardest part is probably really showing that it will work, and getting it done, and then maybe start small with a combination of 2 secondaries and 1 venture, and from there and then build it from there. I think that's going to be the challenge.
Yeah.
Positive challenge.
And you, as a challenger, you like to challenge the status quo. So, how do you look at this?
For me, it's all about the scale and the framework around it and the lack thereof. And that's sort of an oxymoron for me because I'm a person that really likes to go outside of the box and really likes to go hard on certain things. But
Also quite loud.
quite loud, yeah. For your information, I'm being seated the furthest from the microphone because I'm loud.
Hey, that's just...
People know.
I will even move further away, but it goes back to basically school, right? In school, you have a very clear framework around what you're supposed to do, right? What are your classes? What is the subject matter? How much you have to study for it?
Even what's the desired outcome?
What's the desired outcome? There's a time frame around it. There are, tests along the way before you get to the final test, so you can always gauge where you are at compared to the rest of the class, compared to the rest of your world. Okay, then you finish. Let's say you go over to university, less strict, more free. Some people already struggle with that. Some people party too hard, don't study. Okay, you finish with university, you graduate, you start your first work, you're back again in a bit of a strict, controlled environment. A lot of people really love that. A lot of people thrive in that. But then imagine I don't.
Just for the record.
I can't listen at all, so it's impossible for me. It's not that I also have issues with authority, but I have more issues with someone else's rule book and me having to follow that. I do love a rule book, and I do have a rule book, but it has to be
yours.
my own. But if you go into entrepreneurship, right, and you create a company, you create something that is already so wild, and no one's going to tell you if you're underperforming, overperforming. You have simply no indication of whether you should be working 20 hours on this, 40, 160, or nothing is ever enough. Take it to the next level. Now imagine it's something that doesn't exist yet.
Yes.
So
we arrive at the point where we're now.
Yeah. So it is so incredibly exciting, but at the same time, it can be also so frustrating. As you guys know, I am I'm the founder of one of the ventures that we are doing, and it's basically solely being done by me. And this venture is incredible on the one hand, but it's so incredibly frustrating on the other hand, because how much do I work on it?
Yeah. Well, we've had a lot of we had a discussion about it 2 weeks ago, I think. And
there's no lower limit, right?
No.
There's like, at least do this, but there's also no upper limit. There's no like, okay, if you've done this, then you can move on to other things. You can do a bit of personal branding. You can focus on raising money for the fund. You can do this, you can do that. No, there's simply such a wild and wide
Everything is
spectrum.
open. Yeah.
Everything is open. And I can equate it to really going from a salaried 9-to-5 worker to a first-time founder.
Yeah.
This step, going from a regular entrepreneur or a regular VC in that sense to a venture builder, it's completely uncharted territory. So that means that around every nook and cranny you can find a gold mine or a minefield.
Yeah.
I think the cool thing about the venture building is like not just doing our own, but also like spot founders that are already doing something and then see how. I think we're very good at spotting opportunities and then vetting it and then so that's going to be very very exciting and I'm 100% sure it will work.
Awesome.
Yep.
So since it's just the three of us here, I also want to get a bit personal. We've all been part of this journey with the three of us. And Wim, let me start with you. I have some questions for you. You've often said that your kids are a big part of your motivation.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, when you think about their future specifically and the kind of world that you want them to grow up in, how does that shape what you're building with Hive? Are you creating something for them, or are you providing them with the necessary tools that they might one day use to build their own world?
I think it's like it's two-sided. I got into it more to create like a better world, so more from that angle. I think now it's still you want to create a better world, and then maybe like a more optimized, focused on food and agriculture, on optimized food system where first of all later on they can, and maybe that's a bit of ego, or that's just that you can make them proud on let's say, hey, we did this, and
So
you
it's
can,
your legacy.
it's it's a legacy, and that in that legacy it is more like what I want to leave for them. But I would find it incredibly cool if you have this portfolio of ventures and that's quite diversified, and maybe later on it will also go into other angles, but that you can give them opportunities, of course, to do whatever they want. But if they want to work for one of the, it's like creating these opportunities for your kids for later is also a legacy. So yeah, I think that's mostly what it, I think the legacy part is mostly what it is. That's really important.
You've also spoken a lot about wanting to democratize private markets, especially in the context of building something for your kids, or the next generation. I think that goes for all of us, that they could actually access that. But what does this mean for you in practice?
I think it starts, and I was talking about this with somebody over the weekend, it needs to change with education, where like financial literacy should be mandatory in schools, because it's something that everybody, well, at some point, normally you will start earning money. How do you handle that money? What do you do with it? And then it's, when we had this discussion that you also have these pockets where that's for that, that's for that, but not everybody does that.
I would argue that most people don't do that.
Most people don't do it, no, that's true.
I might be a bit extra in this, but
Even I don't do it. I let her do it.
No, but it's important that from a young age, because if you start early, that's also when you can create, like, you know, compound interest, and it's such a what is it? Do they call it? It's like the how many world wonders are there?
seven.
Seven. Yeah, they call compound interest, I think, the eighth.
The eighth world wonder.
And if you can also include investing in private markets in things that have impact, and then that would be really cool if
So
you
maybe
can
also
get there.
make it more accessible, is what you're
Yeah,
saying?
make it more accessible, and there are more and more companies that are doing this. I think it's you can look at, I think Carbon Equity is a very good example of a company that does democratizes private markets where people can invest for lower investment amounts. I think if you do that, you also create like a bond, or like a commitment from more engagement with people that actually see things. This company is doing that. It's when you invest in Apple because you like it,
also
and you have
use-
Apple products, or let's say you for your kid you invest in a Disney stock because they watch Disney, and then you can also educate them about that they own a bit of Disney in a way.
Connect a part of their world to their future world, perhaps.
Yeah. I've seen this with it was in, I think, some guy with a blog that had like a portfolio for his daughter, and it was only shares of things that she knew. So it was like Disney, for example, and then because she has an iPad, Apple, and some other things. So yeah, I thought it was a pretty cool idea of kind of bringing the investment world to a kid, in a way.
Bridges the gap,
Yeah.
makes it more tangible for them, I
Yeah.
suppose.
So I think there's a lot of work still, but a lot to start it on the educational level. Yeah.
And does that already start in primary school?
I
in
would
high
already
school?
start it in primary school, where you can, when kids learn how to count, and when you just make them aware about what money is in a very simple way. So yeah.
I think giving them real life examples and giving them their own framework to let them build that out is probably the most important, because it's not really a case, I'm going back again to the US versus EU, but it's not really a case in Europe, because the employer arranges for your pension and taxes and all of that stuff.
Usually you.
Usually, but in the US, you know, you just get all your money.
Clear.
If I understand it correctly, you get the gross amount, and then you realize how much of that will have to be paid as taxes. So imagine you're an 18-year-old or 20-year-old, and this is your first job, and you get a nice big fat paycheck, and that's even weekly, right? And then you spend it all.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you owe a ton of taxes. Okay, but nobody told me this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think there was this like another guy that had this well, I don't know how you say it in English, like pocket money
Yeah.
to your kids.
Yeah.
And that let's say you get 10 euros a week, and then 4 euros needed to go in one different pot, and that was learning them about taxes. Or I think it was like let's say 6 euros that they received, and then 3 euros goes into the taxes, and then 10 euros goes into like pension. But it's very simple actually to for a kid to understand.
Yeah. Makes
Yeah.
it visible as well. I suppose there's like this pot that you can't touch.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So, David, also a more personal question for you. So the world actually has changed a lot in the past few years that you have been an entrepreneur, and of course we have been privy to your journey. But in business, politics, technology, and beyond, there's been a lot of changes that has impacted that journey. Through all of this, you've also decided to build a company that garnered a lot of attention. Looking back, how has that journey changed you?
Cool. I think one of the biggest changes was my ability, impacted my ability to trust people, and my ability to sort of give this advance or credit trust to certain people and certain companies. I have also learned at my own expense, at our own expense, that when people see money and they smell money, then that completely changes them, that changes their behavior. And even the seemingly nicest people can do a 180 and turn it into a milking game where they try to milk the most amount of money out of you, and that just gets registered in their head as something that they are entitled to.
Yep.
And completely disassociate the person or persons from the money and from the company and the lives that they are potentially ruining with their greedy little choices. I've always been a high functioning contributor. Whether high functioning means good or bad, I'll leave that up to the audience. But I always wanted to do a lot of things at the same time. I always wanted to do multiple universities at the same time. Then next to that, I had to also be a training lawyer at a law firm. Then next to that, I also had to professionally wrestle. So all of this had to happen all at the same time. There was no way for me to just settle down and focus on the one thing. Now, that has gotten a little bit better or more structured in my life in the past few years already. But it has completely changed in the past 12 months, I want to say, where I kind of, I don't even know if we can call it restraint, but maybe I've learned a bit of restraint in that sense, where I only really want to focus on doing one thing, and let's do that thing really well and really focused. And one thing that both Wim and I are very prone to is what we've discussed at the beginning of this episode, is a very, very opportunistic approach to life and to everything. And that is something that I'm trying to keep in check. Every single day, like just this morning, you told me about opportunities in India. We're trying to, okay, interesting, let's explore it, let's discuss it, but not immediately jump into it and not immediately commit whatever hours, resources, money, sweat and blood to it. And that also comes from a very public experience that I've had, let's just put it that way, and dealing with it. And obviously the very intricate details of most of what has happened or is happening are confidential, but it is safe to say that it has greatly impacted and upset my life and my way of life, and obviously our lives. And if anything, I'm trying to take the positives out of it. Is what has it taught me, and what have I learned from it, and what are things that I would definitely never do again. And these are things that are now we are passing on to newer, younger founders and newer ventures and everything and everyone that we encounter. Like, hey, never ever do it like that.
Yeah, it's a like experience.
Yeah. Oh well. Exactly.
Yeah, but it's so important. It's life lessons and also same in business.
Is this maybe also one of the reasons why you guys decided to layer in the secondaries as well within the fund?
Yeah, I do think so. It's especially with maybe the younger companies in there, but also, for example, I know companies that do really well, but the fact where they scaled at some point was when they got marketing right, because they did it wrong for the first 5 years. And so maybe if that experience from our side, or that you can that you can add on, I think that's valuable.
Yeah, I think scaling almost always happens through marketing. So just because you increase your production output, okay, nobody knows. Or you increase, or you make a better technology or a better method or better solution, better utility, better protocol, doesn't matter. If the storytelling is not there, if the marketing is not right, the market itself will not follow. And I think we discussed this earlier, but you have, for example, the astronomical valuation of Tesla versus the moderate valuation of BYD, the Chinese competitor. There's a 10x difference between the valuation at almost exact revenue levels, and BYD even being slightly higher. So if that doesn't tell you just how much prejudice and storytelling and branding and marketing and the whole hero's journey plays into this, then nothing does.
It influences the economics.
At a massive scale. Yeah. I wanted to talk about Trump again, but maybe we will make like a separate episode about just talking about Trump and his influence and how he affects the finance sector.
So just to have a quick fire session, Wim, if you had unlimited capital, what would you build tomorrow?
I've thought about this actually, and I think if I had unlimited capital, I would like do the ultimate football manager and build like a sports game or something like that. Build a football club and then start in lower regions and then build it up to like, it's kind of like the the Wrexham story that no, something like that. I think it's it probably would be something in sports, to be honest.
And you?
It might sound very cliche or altruistic, but I've actually already said this before. I would create really the perfect food system that removes money from the conversation. So if you remember the community farming aspect of what we wanted to achieve years ago, that you create systems that are smart enough, both in resource use, logistics, etc., 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 that it becomes a universal basic food. So it just becomes its own thing, and you never have to think about it, just like you don't think about oxygen and breathing. And and I would like to extend that to also drinking water.
Yeah.
So if food and water become a basic human right, then I would rest.
And I will give them games then.
And then you will give them something to worry about.
So brood and
Oh yeah,
it's
panen met chicken.
That's it.
Yeah, food and entertainment.
Well, who knows? The other episode, you actually said that the money is in the data and not in the food itself. So who knows?
There you go.
I think it's actually possible. If you can, but then probably if you do it as your own venture and you control the whole thing, you can prove that it works.
Yeah.
Question is,
that was the topic of my presentation in 21 in Monaco, where we were with Mark, and we were presenting at the family office event.
Yeah.
We were specifically talking about a Middle Eastern installation that would feed 3 of the biggest countries, and it would run completely in a self-powered way. Through desalination and solar and wind and geothermal and electric vehicles and robots, AI, and all the buzzwords that you can throw at it. But yeah, it would require billions.
Hey, we were talking about unlimited capital.
Yep.
So dare to dream, I would say.
Yep.
what is something that you've completely changed your mind about this year, 2025?
I think it's prioritizing, and this might sound a bit selfish, but yourself, more from a personal perspective, like health-wise, and keeping your sanity sometimes. So I think that's to me the biggest one. Also be kind to yourself, and don't always do everything for others.
Putting on your own oxygen mask first before.
Well, that's it.
Others.
Yeah, exactly. That. Yeah.
Not to copycat you guys and Wim, but same. It's essentially how I spend my own energy and time and money. For me, has always been sort of an outward projection that I wanted to take care of our employees. I wanted to take care of our investors. I wanted to take care of everybody else. In the meantime, didn't take care of myself. And it was sort of like collapsing and rotting from the core, because it became this vicious circle of just work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, and no room for mental or physical health whatsoever. So the overall quality of that work, sleep cycle was just going down into the gutter. And thereby I have basically directly or indirectly have caused also the support that the quality of the support that I'm able to offer to others to decline.
Yeah.
The reshifting focus into Hive and what that means, it came a couple months later, but also meant reshifting focus into, having inner peace and having that mental and physical health to be able to then help others. So I love the, how do you call it? The oxygen mask metaphor.
Amazing. And I can only applaud that. So, based on your answers, what would be the first thing you tell future co-founders in the ventures to do and not do?
Well, I would say take care of yourself, really, like based on what we just said. It's stay true to yourself, and not do, I would say, well, don't take the first check that crosses your the table, but really look at somebody that can add value and have people around you that are willing to share knowledge and network as well, and not just money. Yeah.
For me, it's about a functioning product of your business. Have a small scale, demonstratable and demonstrable MVP, minimal viable product or project or prototype or whatever you want to call it, before scaling. And it is extremely alluring and in a way exciting and easy to scale and aggressively grow. But if at an MVP scale your product or your prototype is not working, then growing it will not fix those problems. It will only exacerbate them and create a much bigger mess.
Yeah, good one.
Yeah.
Perfect. I love it. This is a good note to end it on. Thank you. But before we wrap up the podcast, I would like to, have a beer since we're in the bar. Let's cheer on, many more insightful conversations. Good health.
Oh! Krukken, keiwerken en een tas rein.
Dankjewel.
Alsjeblieft.
Lekker.
Proost, mannen.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And bedankt Krux. Thank you Krux that we were allowed to record our episode here.
Yep.
I actually am looking forward to doing it again. Especially with
Now
the
we're not
beer.
going anywhere. And
No.
special thanks to Clint, who actually helped organize all of this. Just wave for
Thank
the camera.
Hallo.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Don't forget to follow us, like and subscribe, and see you in the next one.
See you in the next one. Hello and welcome. My name is David and this is Building the Hive podcast with Tess and Wim.